Hello, welcome to EPD Pathshala. I'm Aparna from IIT Bombay, and I'm going to discuss about a module on middle class activism in city, which comes under paper Sociology of Urban Transformation. In this module, we'll learn about middle class led activism in the city, especially with attention to the witnessed in the post 1990s. Will also be introduced to the functioning of civil society and resident welfare associations (RWAs) in cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, and Hyderabad. We'll also learn about different concepts related to civil society and political society, bourgeoisie's environmentalism, and civic activism. Another thing we are going to discuss is about the relationship of these concepts to middle class politics, middle class mobilization, and reference to the Aam Aadmi Party phenomenon. This module discussed the rise of middle class led civic activism and its attendant ideologies in cities across India. It is difficult to define, but it's very powerful in its presence. So the middle class has been theorized in different ways by different authors like Fernandez and Heller, Malsday. These authors have also admitted to the difficulty of operationalizing the idea of middle class given its size and diversity. For instance, Malsday admits that the conceptual variance of the middle class can be found in the sheer range of current estimates from around 50 million to 300 million people out of a billion. In order to arrive at an understanding of the middle class, Fernandez and Heller suggest a more practical approach. They point out that it would be beneficial to understand the middle class as a class in practice, that is, as a class defined by its politics and the everyday practice through which it reproduces its privileged position rather than as a static category. India's middle classes tend to be distinguished by cultural attributes such as higher educational attainment than working class citizens, their command over the English language, and more conspicuous consumption patterns. These distinctions build on pre-existing caste and class-based inequalities. The proliferation of the ascendant middle class post-1990s, sometimes also referred as new middle class, is linked to the new economic opportunities that became available after economic liberalization. With their occupations in banking and finance, real estate and information technology, leisure and entertainment industry, this ascendant middle class is also benefited from global linkages resulting from the liberalization of the Indian economy in 1991. Fernandez argues that a distinguishing marker of the ascendant or the new middle class from the older variety of middle class is the culture of consumption. So this culture of consumption is not limited only to the goods and services that are available in the market, but also include the consumption of collective services demanded by the citizen or consumer, like solid waste management, and the demand for better services like open spaces, green spaces, better roads, footpaths, demand for more greenery, demand for beautified and smart cities as well, and as accountability and efficiency from the municipal authority. The middle class, confident in its own economic successes, ascendant or a new middle class emerged out of the development post 1990s. This group also harbors new aspirations and visions for the future, including its surrounding environments and habitats and the cities it lives in. It is no surprise, therefore, to find an increasing number of non-government organizations, citizen groups, resident welfare associations led by this group since the 1990s across India. This profusion of middle-class activism it witnessed in most of the prominent cities in India. The rest of the module, it is divided into 4 sections. Section 2 discusses the rise of middle-class activism in the city in post-1990s period. Though Indian cities witnessed social movements of varied nature, spearheaded by the middle class, a civic activism in the form of growing number of civil society organizations, particularly RWAs, become more pronounced in the post-1990s period. And it identifies specifically the driving forces behind the rise of middle-class-led activism in urban India post the 1990s. This section explains this phenomenon using concepts of political society and civil society borrowed from Partha Chatterjee and the idea of bourgeoisie environmentalism associated with Amitabh Bhaviskar. Section 3 discusses how middle-class associations like RWAs operate, drawing on examples from Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. And in particular, it highlights the distinct class character of these associations. Next section, section 4, discusses the political implications of the rise of middle-class-led associations in terms of overemphasizing administrative efficiency to the disregard of electoral representation. This section is also a comment on the anti-corruption movement and the Aam Aadmi Party phenomenon. Rise of middle-class activism in the city in post-1990s. Historically, civil society movements have taken various forms and have usually been led by the educated urban middle classes. For instance, in Mumbai, these engagements have taken various forms, like citizens' movements for rights and privileges, interventions through the press, informal and formal workings of governance that cut across civil society and political society, working class movements, and movements around language and ethnicity. The evolution of Mumbai's first civil society is strongly embedded in the city's colonial history. Appadurai notes that throughout the 20th century and even earlier, in the 19th century, Mumbai has had powerful civic traditions of philanthropy, social work, political activism, and social justice. Even the most rudimentary forms of early civil society in the city were marked by an engagement with the state for certain specific rights. However, it is only in the changed political context of the 1990s that the relationship between civic activism and the middle classes has become more pronounced. The changed political context of the 1990s, resulting from economic liberalization, the move towards democratic decentralization after the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, and the good governance discourse provided greater opportunities for CSOs to be involved in sectors that were so far dominated by the government agencies. Increasingly, civil society proliferated in sectors like education, health, children's and women's welfare, governance, solid waste management, housing for the poor, among others. With the governance models encouraging increasing participation of citizens and partnerships with government, middle-class-led CSOs became more visible and dominant. Significant legislations like the right to information further empowered the educated middle-class citizenry in India. The law actually places citizens and governments as two parties and empowers the citizen enormously vis-a-vis the government. Citizen activism across India has used right to information as a powerful tool to get things done concerning everyday lives of people, like potholes not filled, encroachments, garbage collection, getting a ration card, etc. The RTI has therefore equipped the middle class and their associations to undertake several initiatives to negotiate and bargain with the government for better delivery of services in cities. The final impetus for the rise of middle-class-led CSOs was the spate of natural disasters that hit the country in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. Disasters like the super cyclone in Orissa in 1999, the earthquake in Bhuj in 2001, the tsunami in Tamil Nadu in 2004 triggered greater involvement of NGOs in post-disaster recovery work. These calamities reinforce the need for stronger partnerships between government and CSOs. The need to fruitful partnerships has been time and again established in various policy documents of the government. Post-1990s provided an opportunity for the new middle class to lead such CSOs for several reasons. The middle class has resources to articulate common interest and mobilize around a common agenda. Second, many members of middle class-led associations have strong ties with government officials. These prove useful during their interactions and in getting things done. Some of the members of these associations are former insiders and are well versed with how government departments function. Finally, members of the middle class have access to various other resources, including the print media, television channels, and the internet, which significantly enhance their public visibility and profile. Since the 1990s, the term civil society has been increasingly invoked by India's urban middle classes to describe their own expectations and aspirations for governance. This is reflected in the rise of government and middle class driven civil society partnership in many cities of India, particularly big metropolitan and mega cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Chennai. The Advanced Locality Management ALM partnership in Mumbai, the Bhagidari partnership in Delhi, Proof, and BUFF in Bangalore, and some of the well-known examples of such partnerships. Partha Chatterjee distinguishes between civil society and political society in the post-colonial context of India. Civil society is the domain of middle-class citizens whose relations with the state are framed within a structure of constitutionally protected rights. Associations of citizens in civil society could demand the attention of governmental authorities as a matter of right, whereas population groups comprising the poor constitute political society. In political society, unlike civil society, multiple and flexible policies are put into operation, producing multiple and strategic responses from population groups seeking to adapt to, cope with, or make use of these policies. The authorities do not treat associations of squatters or pavement hawkers on the same footing as legitimized associations of civil society, which represent proper citizens. The relations of government agencies with population groups of the urban poor are determined not on the terrain of civil society but on that of political society. Amitabh Bavaskar introduces the concept of bourgeoisie's environmentalism to explain middle-class-led activism in urban India. Bourgeoisie's environmentalism is the middle-class pursuit of order, hygiene, and safety, the ecological conservation through the public sphere. She argues that middle-class activists mobilize the discourses of public interest and citizenship to articulate civic concerns in a manner that constitutes a public that excludes the city's poorer sections. Activism and middle-class ideologies in the city. Associational life, CSOs, and collective action in the form of RWAs and neighborhood organizations bear a distinct class character across cities of India. For instance, in Bangalore, the upper stratum of highly professional associations has been very much concerned with the problems of the urban environment, roads rather than public transport, garbage and pollution rather than public housing, mosquitoes and public toilets rather than public health. In Bangalore, large traditional middle class RWAs consist primarily of retired and older middle and higher level bureaucrats and formal sector employees located in stable older core areas which have not experienced much growth. These typically tend to focus their collective action efforts on local cultural and religious programs. Such RWAs exist side by side with RWAs of new elites working in globalized service sectors like information technology, living in enclaves, and largely insulated from the problems of lack of amenities due to their location in gated communities. Harris argues that in the context of liberalization, governance is the idea of the desirability of partnership both between government and the private sector, and the government and citizens. In a study of the Bhagidari scheme in Delhi, Harris explains that the Bhagidari scheme intended to develop joint ownerships by citizens and the government involving partnerships between the RWAs and market traders associations and the Delhi government. The scheme involves such tasks as securing payment and collection of water bills, electricity meter reading, house tax collection, the supervision of sanitation services, and the maintenance of community parks and community halls. He also notes that it gained more prominence in planned colonies and other higher income areas and not in slum clusters in other poor parts of the city. In Mumbai as well, Zera notes the prominence of traditional elites and higher socioeconomic groups in suburbs like Bandra, where citizen activism is more pronounced. In their study in Chennai, Coelho and Venkat note that the middle class RWAs, particularly in the southern wards and suburbs of their sample, Basant Nagar or Shastri Nagar, Alandur, and Perungudi, are dominated by Brahmins and upper castes. The Brahminical character of RWAs is seen not only in their composition but also in their vision and agenda, which are driven by a pursuit of cleanliness and a sense of order based on a functional segregation of spaces, separating commercial. In their study in Chennai, Coelho and Venkat note that middle class RWAs, particularly in the southern wards and suburbs of their sample, Basant Nagar or Shastri Nagar, Alandur, and Tarangadi, are dominated by Brahmins and upper castes. The Brahminical character of RWAs is seen not only in their composition but also in their vision and agenda, which are driven by a pursuit of cleanliness and a sense of order based on a functional segregation of spaces separating commercial and unauthorized activities from the residential areas. In Chennai, Harris again argues that there are organizations concerned mainly with issues of urban governance and the interest of consumer citizens that are quite elitist, run by upper middle class people, mostly Brahmins. These organizations have adopted the formal language of citizenship and speak of participation in budgeting and of transparency and accountability in local government, are run with substantial budget with high degree of genuine professionalism, but they do not even seek a broad popular base. Political implications of middle class activism and ideologies in the city. The absence of spaces for addressing concerns of class citizens and a perception that the poor, favored by elected representatives, are in a better negotiating position with the state. And these are two reasons why middle class, educated, and professional citizens form their own associations to voice concerns, which is related to their own class situations. The shortfalls in governance had become quite acute, inefficient delivery of basic services like water and solid waste management, bureaucratic delays in accessing municipal services, corrupt practices in government offices, poor maintenance of roads, gardens, and open spaces, footpaths, irregular collection and disposal of garbage, lack of scientific techniques in the management of solid waste that were affecting all sections of population. At the same time, middle class citizens lacked the faith in local politicians to solve these. This further provided the impetus to form their own associations like RWAs. Lama Reval points out that civil society groups like RWAs lack faith in the elected representatives because of their low educational and social status and saw them as incompetent and inefficient. The municipal councillors are believed to favor the urban poor in case of conflict of interest, since unlike the middle classes, the poor vote en masse in municipal elections. RWAs perceive electoral politics as being characterized by vested interest, vote banks, and corruption. The RWAs therefore prefer to interact with the non-elected executive wings of the municipal authority, like the Additional Municipal Commissioner AMC, who is an Indian administrative officer appointed by the state government. For these RWAs, administrative efficiency takes precedence over electoral accountability. In a case study of Hyderabad, a city considered at the forefront of municipal reforms, Kennedy has noted that although the councillors entered office under the 74th CAA, their scope of action has not changed substantially. With the increasing involvement of international organizations like the World Bank, the United Kingdom Development Agency, and UN Habitat and Cities Alliance, they may even enjoy less discretionary power than previously previewed. Thus, in some ways, such RWA-led participatory politics defeats the goals of strengthening local self-government as envisaged in the 74th CAA by undermining and bypassing the elected representatives. More generally, autonomous citizen bodies with a considerable representation of middle-class interest and ideologies hinder rather than facilitate the goals of democratic decentralization and undermine the power of urban local bodies by ignoring their views. The middle class led RWAs also function in exclusionary ways. For instance, in Mumbai, the Advanced Locality Management ALM groups that adopted public gardens from the municipal authority for maintenance invariably barred neighboring slum residents from entering into the space, pretext of maintaining cleanliness, locked the gates, hired security personnel, and kept the keys of the garden with themselves. These attempts are in tune with what Fernandez refers to as the politics of spatial purification. Such attempts of spatial purification are also directed towards slum communities that are treated as eyesores and nuisance and stand in the way of creating world-class cities in India. In some recent judgments, the judiciary has also interpreted rights in favor of middle-class based associations rather than slum communities. In his study on Delhi, Gertner has tracked the emergence of the nuisance discourse in the early 2000s and explained how it has recalibrated the factors used to determine a settlement legality and re-problematized slums as nuisance. Similarly, Ghosh notes that how organizations like the Bangalore Action Task Force (BATF) works with municipal agencies that provide the core infrastructure for the city and the services that most affect their business and private lives, like land development and planning, water, power, and telecommunication services, to the complete disregard of social welfare departments like Department of Education and Department of Health and the Karnataka Slum Clearance Board. This clearly indicates the bias in favor of the rich. This suggests an exclusivist kind of civic activism when it comes to partnering with the government. In Bangalore, Delhi, and Hyderabad too, CSOs of this kind have emerged as a collective force and partner with the executing wing of the local government and bypassed elected representatives in the process. The success of the anti-corruption movement and eventual political mobilization in the form of support to the AAP can partly be attributed to the disillusionment and disgruntled educated middle class. Members of the middle class are usually politically reticent, unlike other sections of society. Middle class citizens, particularly in urban areas, have preferred to remain politically aloof or apolitical because of the general distrust towards the political class in the world of politics being ridden with crime, money, and muscle power. Let's summarize what we have learnt in this module about middle class activism. The rise of middle class activism like RWAs is visible in the major cities of India. Their associations are heavily informed by their class experience, the class who form them, the membership profiles, prioritization of issues, and their modus operandi reflect their class interests. And that in turn positions them against other non-elite groups. Notions of residents, notions of citizens, law-abiding tax-paying citizens, notions of encroachers, illegal inhabitants, and nuance, they're common to these discourses. Street vendors and slum communities, they're viewed as perennial problems and they're often categorized as nuisance. Newly acquired legal tools like the RTI Right to Information Act, they have greatly empowered such associations to acquire greater accountability from the government. Whether to reclaim urban spaces or negotiate with the municipal officials to get better services, these associations of middle class citizens, like the ALMs and RWAs, have facilitated middle class politics in ways that were unknown earlier. And indeed, their rise seems to affirm Nandi's claim that, quote, the entire ideology of Indian state is so formatted and customized that it is bound to make more sense and give political advantages to the urban middle class, quote unquote. The anti-corruption movement came at a time when middle class activism was simmering across many cities in India. The fervor of the movement could strike the right chords with these sentiments, and that explains why it found such a huge support base among the middle class.